Hey, good afternoon, Kara. Thanks for joining and coming back onto our session three. We're gonna wait a minute or two to see if we could get a couple more participants, and then we'll get started at 12:02.
Sounds good.
But I'll tell you what, while we're waiting for the others, I was curious, did you have any I don't know, any questions or any thoughts before we jump into this session? I'd love your input since you were kind enough to be a repeat participant for the session.
I'm mostly interested in using the getting the wording down right when we're having conversations. I have a lot of junior people that are working in sales that have really very little experience in sales, specifically with regards to cybersecurity and the CMMC program. So the scripting, they're having some difficulties with some of the scripting and overcoming some of the objections. And so I just wanted maybe some input on how to overcome objections and kind of what the best wording is, some of the best scripting is for this particular sales process.
Fantastic. Well, I hope we could help meet your expectations. We do have a section in here for objection handling. And if I don't have the exact verbiage that you're looking for, I'll have techniques. And if we still don't cover it, then Kara, what I would continue to do is invite you for a conversation when it's convenient for us to talk and see what we can do to help it more effective and impactful for your team,
Sure, that sounds good.
without a doubt. All right, we have Mark joining us again. Mark, thanks for coming back. Excited that you're able to come and join us again.
Hi.
Hey, Mark, Kara was sharing one of the areas she's looking for is objection handling, and you're kind enough to come back and join us again. I was wondering if there was any areas of particular interest that I should keep note of as we go through the next section.
My particular interest was specifically how to go about selling these sort of compliancy services, compliance as a service or cybersecurity as a service.
hmm Absolutely. Well, we have a section on that as well. And I think you're going to be pretty excited. We have some tools in here that I think are going to help you accelerate your selling process as well as help quantify value.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, we're 2 minutes past the hour, and we're going to get started here so far. Thank you again for those that are joining us again for this next section, and I welcome all those that are joining us for the first time of our Ready Aim Sell. This is our part three. We covered the ready session, the strategy, the aim, precision marketing, and today is about getting down to the sell. And in real quick review again, ready was that foundation where we talked about who are you selling to and who are you trying to protect and understanding, what is your value proposition, the niche, the ideal persona, but also giving the framework around all the tools that we're rolling up our sleeves and getting into, such as the seven-stage sales funnel process using Miller-Hyman techniques, finding ways to articulate value through selling compliance as a service with Lionfish, and also leveraging a client relationship management um, tool to help capture and automate this to give you more selling and more business time and not time just kind of like forgetting and leaving things off the table. And in our last session, we talked about aim, and this is where we're really talking about who are we targeting. Once we identified who we feel that we have an ideal solution for and who we think is our ideal customer, we started to begin the prospecting, the outbound, the inbound, and qualifying them. And you might remember the acronym, the BTNA. We covered that and started doing more of the discovery and know how to get their attention. This next session is really more about the execution. It's where we get them from. We've identified them, we qualified them, we did an initial assessment, but how do we take it from here to a commitment and have them as an ongoing client and developing a process that gives you that predictable outcome? And what I want to share with you is that this is really not a system of like one-offs or like, hey, can I just have like your, can you tell me what's your best, closing technique or your best objection? But this is really giving you a structured system and a process to be nimble. And I'm really excited about this next section because this is where we roll up our sleeves. And this is what happens when you're kind of belly to belly with that client and that opportunity. But let's address some of these common problems that we come across that we hear from our MSPs quite often is that there's lack of data and really understanding what the business result or understanding how to quantify the opportunity. And it's fatiguing, right? We're trying to do value-based selling and everybody says, well, give me a quote. Tell me what you can do. And then getting out of that commodity trap and how do we differentiate that we're providing a reciprocal relationship and something that's profitable for both of us. And today isn't just about closing techniques, it's about the infrastructure. And what we're trying to do here is try to help you gain the highest margin possible in mastering some techniques and conversations and driving revenue. I'm really not looking at show of hands here, but if you want to raise your hand or just acknowledge, is there anybody here unfamiliar with the technique called spin selling? I want to make sure that we understand this foundation before we go forward.
Mike, I have a quick question. Are you sharing slides? Because we
Yes,
don't
I
see any.
am.
We don't have any on in our screen.
Okay. It says I'm sharing my screen.
It lied to you.
How about now? How about now?
We're waiting. It's still black. At least that's what I.
I see it.
I can see it. They're up.
I see it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just me. Now, could you see it before, or is it just now?
No, but now I can, so we're good to go.
Okay. Well, as a real quick, this is what you missed. 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 And I thank you because I put so much time in working with all these different software tools to make it look pretty. And I feel like I showed up and didn't bring the dessert. Sorry. Now you've got it. So thank you, Jeremy, for calling that out. I should have did a quality check on here. How about now? Let me ask the question again. Anybody here not familiar with the spin selling technique?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Kara, thank you again for braving that out. Anybody here familiar with it? I'll take that as a consensus that maybe we're not familiar with it and maybe a great opportunity for us to go ahead. Spin selling has been around for probably about 4 or 5 decades. It is professional selling skills. This has been the foundation of selling techniques that all the large organizations like IBM, Xerox created the foundation years ago as IT and tech started to enter into becoming a true vocation called sales. And spin is a combination of these four question areas that you want to understand before you sit across the customer and you need to understand what is their situation. This is when your discovery, when you're just uncovering a lot of facts. What do they do? How do they do it? Where do they do it? The next one is the problem questions. What is the problem? Do they perceive it? Do they understand it? Do they understand the root cause of it? What is the cause of it? Can they identify? And they've expressed dissatisfaction. The next area is the implication. So kind of like you have a leak in the house in the roof. If you don't fix the leak, what could really happen to your house if you ignore this leak? It gets bigger and the cost gets greater. And you need to feel that. So if you think about it, problem is the pain, and implication is where they feel the pain. And the needs payoff is that solution you're providing, the feature, the capability, the advantage, and the benefit to them that they need to understand that. And I really wanted to focus on this because while you've got them qualified and you've done an assessment, the natural part is to say, well, this is what we can do. But what I urge all of you to do is take a step back, do a checklist here, and say, do I have these areas here before I go forward? Or should I go back and ask these questions some more? So, Kara, we were asking about, handling objections. When you have this information, it makes handling the objections far easier to tackle than it is waiting towards the end when you're able to qualify, quantify, and collaborate throughout the process. So when you get, did you gain the insights on what's the business result they want to achieve? What's the personal win? Were we able to quantify the problem? Do we have all the key stakeholders there? Who's got that level of influence to make that contract get signed? Do we understand their process of making a decision, the timing, and who has the authority? Did we confirm that the funding is there? Okay, did we really understand what they want to truly fix, avoid, or accomplish? And did we secure a coach who's going to help us because it helps them? There's something personally tied to them, to their success. It could be a promotion, it could be a deal that they want. It's something personal about it that they need, and they have a high level of influence to make it happen. When you have all this together, then you're ready to present. And it's a very thorough discovery process that prevents the commoditization and accelerates the decisions. So now let's get into what the rest of the session is designed for, which is that stage 4, we're presenting our solution to them, but we're often faced with this gap where you have all this information, but you're trying to present value before you present the solution. And this is where we go ahead and review, like, hey, these are all the situational questions, all the information that you gathered. You've been able to identify the problem. You know what they need to fix, what they're trying to avoid, what they're trying to accomplish, and you understand the implication if it goes, and not just you, but you help them understand, hey, do you realize if you don't fix this, you may be vulnerable to a fine or losing a contract or a reputation or downtime? Articulate the value of your services and the cost of their pain. And we're going to help you with some tools as we go forward here. Stage 5 is presenting the financials. And I want to share with you that you want to make sure that you get that emotional need, that pain, and you want them wanting to see your financials and they understand the cost of their pain. And you help your client feel the pain before you present this, because then it's a lot more palatable to say, oh, well, to avoid $100,000 worth of downtime, risking a contract, etc., you're only going to charge me maybe 7 to 10% of what that cost is. Yeah, I think that's worth it. So what we feel here is that, and Kara, I'm going to call it out here are, is this where like the greatest challenge is the deal just gets stalled?
Um, there's part of it. It's kind of a two-pronged thing. You get people that are very junior in their position, so they are incapable of understanding your value prop. So the education part is lengthy, and they don't want to be embarrassed that they don't know what they should know. So it gets stalled at the junior level, and they're afraid to take it to their bosses. And then you've got the business people who have no clue what they're buying, so they don't know how to evaluate. So there's a gap there in the buying process. So we have very senior business people that don't understand technology or compliance. And then we have very junior people that don't understand the industry and are only like a year or two into cybersecurity. So we have a gap.
Hmm.
That gap is closing slowly, but that's where we are. So we're educating and mostly translating and educating different domains. It's lengthy and it's expensive, and the prospecting is very lengthy and expensive. So
Hmm.
one is to identify who's ready to buy. So that prospecting part is hard. Compliance is a little easier because they have to do it. So if they don't have it done, then they have to do it. So that's a little bit better. Um, but yeah, it's finding it and then demonstrating or incentivizing these guys to move it ahead or move it forward. So it gets stopped because they don't understand it. They don't have the authority. They just don't want to do it. They're tired. It's Christmas. They don't want to work. So it sits there. There's a lot of reasons. And then it sits there. And then you follow up after you've sent the proposal or the quote. And then it's crickets. So, and there's only so many times you can follow up before you start stalking them. So you can't do that either. So, they're all hot and, oh yeah, send me your information, send me your information. And you do, and you say, okay, I'd like to book a meeting to go over it. And then nothing. No
Mhm.
feedback, no comments, no nothing. It's just dead. And then, one or two or three follow-up meetings, and it's still crickets. You have no idea if it's moving ahead, if they have issues, if it's pricing, nothing. They just don't communicate.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you, you're not alone in that. I promise you that I won't give you the exact answer that'll solve it all tomorrow, but I think I have some things that we could really challenge and look at the process a bit, because oftentimes what I'll go back is it comes down to that discovery and qualifying checklist. I'm going to jump back real quick here and take a look at here because it sounds to me like, we may have an opportunity here to, did we really understand? Did we have a coach there? Who really could help us understand what's their process timing and who has the authority in doing that, and then really understanding with each person we're talking to, what is their personal business result, or do they understand the business result? And if not, who can we get in front of that understands that? And with that person, what is their personal win if this gets resolved? How does this help them? And if it doesn't get resolved, how does it hurt them? Simple but hard. Simple but hard. I feel your pain on that. But we'll give you some other techniques here as we get into that a little bit. But great insights. So what I'd like to share with you is that we've got three sets of tools here that we put together for you in today's session. On the left-hand side, I intentionally made it a bigger graphic because this is a pain point that I think comes across more often, which is kind of like that objection handling. And objection handling could be something that is intentional or explicit, where someone verbalized it. And then in some cases, that the non-verbalizing or the non-action is also an objection when someone ghosts you, and it's trying to find that trigger that you get in front of somebody that will have that conversation. So we're going to go over our technique for objection handling, where we listen, understand, clarify, and respond. And it's a way of leading with empathy and having a strategy, and then becoming that trusted advisor and getting the small commitments as we go through and uncovering who else is involved in the process and what is their timing. And is there anything else in their process we're not aware of? Are they tire kicking, or are they truly interested in fixing something? The other area here is that we have an opportunity where this addresses one of the other participants. I think it might have been you, Mark. If I'm wrong, then I apologize here. But we've got the lionfish quantification tool, which is the ability to quantify or give the ability to give metrics behind the value of what you're providing, and also a revenue generator here, which is a nice tie between all of these, which is compliance as a service. This really helps articulate the non-technical and the technical. It's a great bridge. And I would employ all of us to take a look at that later on if we didn't cover it in great detail. But here are the three tools that help us to get to where we're going next, because before we get to the close and the implementation, we need to make sure we come over the hurdle and they understand the value gap of what you're proposing and what they're about to engage here. So on the compliance as a service here, what we're talking about is our Lionfish Cyber Tackle Box GRC. For our NSPs, this is predictable revenue. It's compliance as a service. It creates the ability to employ your authority and becoming a subject matter expert, and having come in here as a trusted resource of what you have because it's very difficult to interpret what these requirements are, what they require to do as far as in their frameworks, what they need to do with their controls, what they need to do with their infrastructure. And this I found to be a great tool to articulate the non-technical and the technical. Why are you doing this? And when you get to that senior level, it's understood at all levels why they're doing what they're doing, when they're doing it, and how they have to do it. And for the MSPs, there's a great ROI here because it's an additional service that you could provide that complements all the other components that you have to do anyway. So we moved from bricks, fixing and things that are just broken into enhancing and reinforcing processes and having that monitoring. And it's truly an engine behind the strategy and providing a great value proposition. On here, we won't have enough time on this session here, but what I wanted to share with you is an example of an output of articulating the value of your services through the Lionfish value quantification tool. It is truly a sales enabler. It's an accelerator in the sales process because you could sit across the table and ask a series of questions and you could quantify how it's impacting their operations, their strategy, their productivity, their competitiveness, their ability to grow, their compliance, their resilience against cyber attack. And you could come across here with a number and show like, hey, when you invest with us, here's your ROI based on what you invest with us and where we could go. And this creates a kind of a stress level to say, if you don't move on here, and I'm being extreme, right? But I tend to be a little bit bold here in the training forum. But when you're dealing with an influencer that doesn't have the authority, the question is, are you willing to be the person responsible for having this knowledge and impeding the ability to move forward or increasing the risk to the organization and not moving forward here? I mean, is this something that leadership would appreciate you in that role? Or at the other end is how can I help you make you look like a hero? You're taking the resources and the time in order to make sure you have resilience, you have a plan in place, and you could create a competitive edge and increase your ROI on the workforce. So you have a choice here. If you act on it, you could be, the hero. If you don't, you're going to be part of the villain. And you create that hurt and that anxiousness to move forward. So the way this tool operates is there's, very common questions and there's common metrics that all of you are aware of in your industry and in the industries that you're serving. And we provide it into a tool and we're able to give this output. So the benefit to this value quantification tool is it helps manage some of those objections that you have along the way by articulating. It gets you away from price haggling. It helps you shorten the sales cycle. It justifies your premium rates. It leverages the negotiations. It fosters those collaborations. And it gives you the ability to discover quantifiable business impact. And again, if you would like a more active demonstration, we won't have it in this setting, but you have my contact information. And I ask you, get a hold of me and let's go ahead and get a session where we could provide value here. So now let's get into some of the objection handling, and this could be a bit more interactive here. And I urge you, if we've not covered it, to go ahead and let's discuss it and use some of this time. I built in a little extra time to make this an interactive dialogue because I can't think of every objection you come across or the perception or how it's come across. But what I did do is look at what are the four most common objections that MSPs and most businesses that are providing a service come across. You know, cost. The account thinks maybe they're too small of a target. They're really not seen as a vulnerable threat. Um, maybe they think they're staffed enough that if the person does the work themselves, maybe there's an ego challenge. Well, I've got it handled, or they feel like someone they're paying a salary, they should get a higher return, and like, no, we got it under control. And then, or maybe it's a family relative they're obligated to. You don't know. And then the next one here is maybe it's the complexity of the compliance. Like they don't understand what they need, and they need an education. They think it's like a software that they just input and it should make it all go away, but they don't understand the process of implementing and making sure it's updated, making sure there's a process behind it, making sure there's a compliance around it. Are there any other objections that we're coming across here that may not be included in like these four major buckets? Okay, well then I will take it that within these four areas, we must be able to cover the majority in some way, shape, or form in these categories here. And the technique, quite genuinely, is many people, and I will say I am guilty of it. I'll even say that even in my personal life, having a relationship over 3 decades, sometimes you listen to respond, but you don't listen to understand. And I would tell you that the most effective salespeople I've met, or the most effective business people, are those that are incredibly patient and they listen with golden silence and they listen with empathy. They're not being distracted by looking at another, either looking at their phone or looking off to the side on their computer at another screen, but they're genuinely engaged. There's full contact. The eyes are looking forward but not staring. You're nodding your head a bit that you're acknowledging that you're engaged. And the next area is understanding, and it's listening, and it's maybe even asking a clarifying question. If I understand it correctly, this is what I'm hearing. Is this true? And then the other one is to reframe it and shift it. Well, I understand that you feel like perhaps maybe the cost is expensive. And many small, medium-sized businesses are really looking at how they leverage their resources. I understand it. But let me ask you, have you ever thought of it more as an investment in order to make you more competitive or to provide more compliance so you can compete for these other contracts? Or did you ever look at the cost that's greater that if you don't resolve this, what's the cost of not fixing this if you have downtime? If your workforce can't produce, if your clients can't get a hold of you, what's that cost? Or if you can't service your clients. And then with the small target, I would employ you to share what you can with fact. I mean, it's Jeremy Miller could share with you statistics cold that the small and medium-sized businesses and even the smaller infrastructures, the smaller governments, they're more vulnerable than the larger institutions and in the larger government settings. And this is where the enemy gets inside the wire. And the compliance or the complexity, again, this is where gosh, this is, I think, always going to be an ongoing responsibility of all of us is to break it down to the common denominator and help them understand, what is it that's required? What is the ongoing evolution of compliance and how can we help them bridge that gap? And for all those that are dealing with CMMC level one, I think all of us are being challenged with those same conversations with someone who's just simply not in the business of IT, but they're finding themselves all of a sudden being burdened with having to understand how to become compliant so they could still do business with the federal segment. And I could tell you that when you respond, one of the areas that I think is most effective is when you teach and collaborate and help educate and collaborate. It takes you from the opposite side of the table to getting the same side of the table. I welcome feedback, questions, challenges. I would love it because this right here is where I wanted to make sure we spent some quality time here because this could be a hurdle or an accelerator depending on how it's managed. Well, I'd like to share all of you have become experts at exercising golden silence. This is exactly what you want to do with your client when you are listening to their objection or you're getting in the next section where you're presenting your solution and you're waiting for them to respond. So, uh, what I'd like to just offer is if you feel that your deal is stalled or you want better help at trying to create value and non-commoditize your service, you want to have a strategy session, you want to go over how we can help provide value. Here is my information. Let's sit across the table here and let's have a more constructive dialogue where maybe we could take ourselves away from the audience, away from the videotaping, and get into a natural state and have that conversation. I would love to sit across the table. Again, there's no obligation. We're offering, a simple conversation, and I'll even bring my own coffee. How's that? So the next two areas I'd like to cover here, which gets into closing, the asking for the business. If we've done our homework up front, we've qualified that customer, we understand that they're timing, they have funding, we're in front of the right people. We've been able to quantify, we presented the ROI, and they come to an agreement like, yes, this does make sense. And they see the timeline of your solution. Ask for the business in a frank and fear-free manner. Ask for it. And they push back. It's okay. It's okay. Sometimes you need to go back and revisit, but those objections are buying signals. But if we've done everything up front, this usually becomes the easier part of the sell. And the next area I really wanted to focus in on is that what happens after the sell? What techniques do you have in place to ensure that they have an outstanding experience, that it becomes collaborative, you're able to grow and expand additional services and ask for referrals? And I would share with you that this often at times becomes the beginning and not the end. And when you expand on other services that you're currently offering, this is where the relationship becomes much more profitable. Kara had mentioned, the cost of prospecting a new customer could be anywhere between 10 and 100 times more cost than it is to grow an existing customer. And this is where we take the time to truly nurture. They're your best references, they're best advocates, best advertising, and the best opportunity to expand your services. And what I would also share with you as another opportunity here is um, if you're using spreadsheets, if you're using Notepad and there's no formal process, I urge you, and I did not create another slide, but this is more conversational, is we need to discuss how in our strategy session we come up with a client relationship management process. It can help you pre and post and even help you before the next sale. And it helps you track your history and automates a number of these areas that, quite frankly, none of us have the time to remember, recall, or note. And it also provides a great deal of automation in the communication and prompts. So we have covered the entire blueprint for your growth and profitability. We have leveraged the seven-stage sales funnel process and broke down each component. We leverage how do we take all of your clients and put it in a systematic process for you. How do we leverage the tools with the value quantification and help you articulate your value? Also provide you another revenue source, which is, compliance as a service, and help drive and increase the productivity you have with your client. And then we also address some of the areas or challenges we have in terms of handling objections, articulating value. And there we have all three sessions ready where we've identified our unique value proposition and who is our target audience and what is our processes in place to go out there in a repeatable, methodical process to create success. Stage or the aim, which is going in and targeting and engaging and qualifying. And then the final one where it is down to the selling. Any other questions that I can help answer? Any conversations or concerns? Any challenges? I open it up to the audience here.
Hey, Mike. It's Elizabeth. I know we work together. This is an actual question. So I tend to I get stumped up on the objections. And I know you kind of went through that. And you said something really important. You said objections are a buying signal. Help walk me through what that means, please.
As a professional salesperson, I should be a professional listener. When someone is communicating, that is a signal that there is some form of interest in what you have to offer. If you presented and you heard silence, oftentimes it means that either A, they're genuinely not engaged, or perhaps they're not seeing value, and you really don't know what they're thinking. But if they present their thoughts and ideas in the form of an objection, it gives you that opportunity to listen, understand, clarify, and you may understand, hear it again. Like, can you help me understand? I'm not sure what you meant by that. And then you reframe it in a way that you know, based on your experience, that, and I love this empathetic way of approaching it. It's called feel, felt, found. In your experience, I understand how you feel. We deal with many other small businesses of your type or other type of businesses of your type that come across this all the time. And they felt the same way you did when I was at the same stage presenting. But when we went through and were able to show them where they invest and avoid risk, avoid damages, or they are able to see the investment and the return, they were motivated to move forward. And they found when they did, they had success in the following areas. So I often tie that in because that is just an instinctive, especially when you're an empathetic listener, you understand how they feel. You have other people that felt the same way. And when you shared your success that you had with other people, you understand, and this is how they found success together. And that's why if you heard nothing, you don't know where they stand, and you don't know how to address it. There's no dialogue.
Okay, that's helpful. And do you find it helpful to just like take a breath and think about what they said? Because my knee-jerk reaction is, well, they don't want this. And so how do you just build in time for yourself or
Um, I think the best thing to do is if you're, I have a couple of different thoughts, but this is one that I use is that if you have that sense of anxiousness inside, you're breathing fast, there maybe you're just feeling like, oh, you got a little like you're just feeling edgy or anxious. Take a step back and breathe and allow yourself quite genuinely the 3-second rule to breathe and be deliberate. You'd be surprised how long 3 seconds is in a conversation when you're quiet. And the other part also is when you listen, truly listen, because quite often what I find is when you hear the objection, you're quick to give the answer, but help that person with their journey and understand where they're coming from. Can you help me understand where you're coming from? Can you help me understand why you're thinking this? Or is this something that the organization, is this an experience? Can you share with me the experience that's causing you to share this with me? And help them bring that to the table. If you give a solution too quick before someone is willing to accept it, a lot of times they didn't hear it. You heard yourself say it, but they didn't hear you deliver it.
that's super
Did that
helpful?
help?
Yes, thank you.
And believe me, everything I'm sharing with you, I'm guilty from the conversation I had with someone before I got on this webinar, and I'll be guilty today and tomorrow and not listening to my own advice. And I'll listen to this webinar and say, oh gosh, Mike, you got to eat your own medicine. You got to take your own medicine. And what I find myself is you got to listen to understand and not listen because you're quick to respond. And when you get experience, you'll find that there's these common objections you come or common scenarios you come across. And I say you leverage it, but before you do, ask that person, the five whys. Why do you feel like that? Why is that a concern? Why is that an impact? Ask those questions? Why? Get down to it. And this is becoming empathetic and you're qualifying and quantifying where this person is coming from and take out that assumption. Say, you know what? I have my thoughts, I have my bias, but I don't want to bring it into this conversation and be inaccurate because I value this conversation. I value what I'm trying to do here, and it may be unique from the other experiences that I think are similar, but I would love to just see if there's a lot of commonality that I'm coming across. Because again, all of us, when you're feeling the pain, you feel that you're the only one that's unique. Like no one else has ever felt this, right? So share that empathy. And this is why I say this is the time where I'd love to share more on the objection handling and the preparation of value, because when you have this in place, it really uncovers, am I talking to the right person? Do I have the right influencers, the right people? It also lets you know what's the timing. Is this pain acute enough? Like, are you really could afford to let this go? And do you have a budget cycle when you spend and invest in this area? And by the way, what is your process? Who has the authority to approve this? I understand I'm speaking to you, but if you don't mind, can you help educate me? Who in here really has to bless your idea before you can implement it? And how could I help you present your business case? And who are you competing against in order to get your idea heard versus others there? Or what other areas are you competing with in your priorities that I could help you with? Have the dialogue. Armand, is this helpful? Mark, not asking to come off camera, but if you came off camera and gave me a thumbs up, I'd love it.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Gotcha. Anything unique that has come across your way, Mark or Armand, Tom?
Hi, I think a lot of what you've said is we've come across different methods with slightly different approaches, but it reinforces those other approaches with most of what you said. I was hoping for a little bit more specific guidance on how we sell the benefits of compliance as a service. And also, I think one of the objections may well be on how experienced or certified we are as a business selling it. I know that you've got some great tools that will do most of the work, but what sort of level of certification should we have when trying to present compliance as a service?
Okay, so great question. I think it depends on what area of framework that you're dealing with and what's required. I think in certain areas of like CMMC and what levels you might need to bring in someone that has got more of that certification. And I'll throw out some acronym alphabet soup there, but you have varying levels of your RPs, your CCPs, or CCAs that would come out depending on what level that they're at. And we as an organization at Lionfish, we actually train people up that if you need levels of certification, we provide the education. We're actually an authorized training provider um, for known by Cyber AB, which is the accredited organization that gives us the authority to actually train. So we have people that are in that area that would teach the course and get you that certification and help coach you through with your client.
Okay.
And Mark, thank you for being vulnerable. You're right. The sales and selling techniques have been around for a very, very long time. Quite frankly, if you ever read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that has been so many versions, and they've tried to carve it so many ways. But quite frankly, the content has not changed since like the I think 1920s when it was first published and it was out there and they're coming out. But what I try to do here is bring a different perspective to a group that may have heard it but not have practiced it because maybe a bit more technical or just a different perspective to give a refresh on how to approach a situation. And that's really what I was striving for here, as well as to give you access to some tools that we vetted out here that you could take out in your arsenal. Like, can you sit across with a value quantification and ask them questions as you're qualifying them and have it see in their own eyes, like, this is the cost of the return on investment. Whether you want to be the villain or the hero in this situation by acknowledging that the problem exists and how it could exacerbate itself if it goes unattended. And the other area there is also providing a revenue generating service that really is a complement to what you do technically, but it is a conduit or a interpreter when you use a compliance tool. It helps explain like, hey, you're doing this because there's a framework of controls. And if you're in this industry, here's what is known as their, compliance, their regulatory, in some cases, their governance that are out there that, quite frankly, if there's a breach and you were not acknowledgeable, you're going to be exposed to fines, and shame on you because ignorance doesn't excuse you from your responsibility. And you've presented it to them so they know that, hey, here are the solutions. Put it forth in front, and here we go. And then the technique of when people push back or they don't understand, sometimes you could question and qualify. Am I talking to the right person? Do they have the authority? Do they have the right timing? Should I spend more time with them? And if I am, do I have the right people in place? Do they have the funding available? Do they have the level of influence? Do they feel the need? Do they feel that sense of urgency? But great dialogue, Mark. I appreciate the feedback and the example. I mean, this is like now I know what my audience is feeling. And Tom, I know that you've been affiliated with Lionfish Group for quite some time. I'm just curious if this may help you at all in some of your areas of consulting and just maybe positioning something different to get you a little bit more forward in your process and progressive.
Well, thanks. Yeah, no, it's all good information, and yeah, I'm looking forward to applying some of this strategy on the activities that I've got coming up. So, thanks very
All
much.
right. Fantastic. And before I wrap up, I'm just curious if anybody would be kind enough to just tell me if give me one thing that was your takeaway. If you've been to all three sessions or just today, what's your one takeaway that you felt brought value for you to invest your 48 minutes with me today?
I'll begin because today was hugely valuable just from the standpoint of objections are a buying signal, and to get out of my own way, get out of my own biases, and continue to ask the questions. So thank you for that.
Awesome, Elizabeth. Thank you. Kara, along the line of objection handling, did we get any closer with with you? And if you don't mind, can you expand on it so I don't give you a closed question, but I get you to maybe expand on it and get me to understand more?
Sure. So it didn't help when I'm getting ghosted by emails. So I've gotten through it. They're all excited. They want the proposal. They get the paper. I send it in, and then there's nothing. Crickets. And I send up a couple of follow-up emails, nothing. So when there's no engagement, I just go away. But I think, I try and say, like, I'm going to send this over. Let's set up a meeting so we can discuss the contents so that they'll engage with another meeting so that at least I can talk to them about the contents of the proposal, but they won't even engage in conversation. So,
Okay.
and this is normal. Like, this is like normal course of business. They just ghost you. And I need a strategy to overcome the ghosting without stalking them. Because, you don't want to be pestering somebody all the time either, because that's a turnoff. So how do you deal with the ghosts?
So there's one technique that I may offer, and you may be already doing it, right? But let me ask you this, Kara, when you're presenting your solution and presenting your financials, do you send it out in advance, or do you require a meeting, like a session like this, where you sit across and present it in real time before you share the document with them?
I've just sent it out because they've requested that, but I think that might be a better way to deal with that before I share the document is to have a meeting where we do before I even send it out. That might be a better strategy because they're taking my paper. I know they're taking it and they're comparing it to the next guy and the next guy, and I'm probably like the third one, not the first one. They're just doing their due diligence, and I'm the third person they're looking at. So that's probably a good strategy. Before I send it out, I'd like to have a meeting and we'll go over it together, and then send it
Yeah.
out like half an hour before the meeting, so that they
I,
maybe that's a better way to go about it.
I would say that I agree with you, Karen, and it takes great courage, right? Because you think like, gee, if I just to get it over and I comply with what they want, then they're going to do business with me. But I would say what I would offer is that you're going to have a meeting where you're going to present the tailored solutions, and you don't even provide the quote. You present, this is the tailored solutions. Before I present the financial quote over to you, we want to make sure that our solution is accurate and we truly identified what the problem is and what our solution is more accurate. And once you have that, then you send it out and you let them know like this is a process. And I wouldn't negotiate it, Kara, because with the amount of time and attention it takes for you to put together a full-blown quote, even if you have it automated, it's still time out of your day that I would not surrender that time, and I would allocate that to either other prospecting or those areas that are more qualified. The hotter leads or the hotter prospect. If I could be so bold to offer that as a proposal.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because I'm getting tired of being ghosted by these guys that are just shopping or window shopping. I want to we're the best in our trading area by far, the most experienced. But when you're just getting a check the box, they're buying, but I don't want to be the third box. I want to be the first one. I want to be the one that they buy from, and they don't
Sure.
value. And you're right, because they don't value the expertise that you put into building a proposal and a custom tailored quote. They don't value that, and by making them meet with you, if they put time in, then they have to value it, at least for the amount of time that it takes, even if it's a half an hour, to go over the tailored solution. And if they're not willing to do that, then they're not the right fit. They're,
Correct.
they're not a
And
buyer. And it's good to get rid of them out of your funnel for the time being without giving up your proposal and your IP, because it's a tremendous amount of expertise that goes into making these proposals for these guys. This is a
absolutely.
and they're just copying it and giving it to their buddy or whatever. So it's a good way to find out if they're serious or not and protect your IP in the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would make that part of your stage three qualifying process in there and kind of like do a blend of qualifying in your stage four, which is your tailored solution. Before we go, hey, listen, before we go to print and give this final proposal, we want to understand that. And this also gives you a better chance of understanding, like, hey, before we go ahead and send this over, are there any other requirements you have to vet out a vendor that we need to be aware of before we go forward? Are we working on equal terms and conditions, or do you have a purchase order of your own terms and conditions that I have to work with? You could put it back on them, and then the other areas, listen, this is our process. If when you're truly ready to vet it out and sit across the table, this is where we deliver our best results. This is not something that you could just take off the shelf.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and I'll do that. I probably will get better results. And then for the ones though, do you have a strategy for ones that have ghosted you? You've sent your proposal, you've done all this, they've checked all the boxes, they sound really excited and eager, and then there's nothing. So what do you do in that case? I have one that I've sent out a CMMC. proposal for a pre-assessment. He was so excited, pumped. We met. He was awesome. And then I sent it over and I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I sent it to him, and like 2 weeks ago, I followed up one email a week so that I don't stalk him. But I'm thinking I should phone him now and say, hey, did you get the emails? Because I haven't heard back from you. Like, I don't know what to do with them because I don't want to send emails. What if he's going into junk or something? Or I'm not sure what to do with that guy. And, he has to have it. It's not an option. So he is a qualified buyer. His company has to have it. It's just, is he going to select us or somebody else? So I'm stumped on what to do with him.
Okay, so Kara, I'm going to tell you a couple of things. First of all, if you haven't had a phone call, you need to make a phone call. You got to make a phone call, and I would leave the messages and just say, hey, I haven't heard from you. I'm not sure if my emails are going into, your promotional folder, your spam folder, or I'm getting, knocked out. But I just want to make sure, are you getting my communications? And see if they respond to that. And then I've seen this happen with some people that do it to me, and it depends on what what works for you, right? Some people can be a little bit more edgy than others. But you may just put out there and just say, hey, was it something personal? Is there something out here that I did that offended you? Did I scare you away? Or are there, can you help me understand what it is? Can I get some feedback? And if you don't hear anything from there, and just, let them know. Maybe the next question is, hey, are you still, even if it's CMMC, are you even still competing for federal business? Or did you drop this out of your portfolio of clients and you're no longer I'm raising my own hand, is that it?
So here's another question. I have both his cell phone and his office line. Do I call his office line or do I call his cell phone?
Call the cell phone.
Okay, thanks.
In my humble opinion, Kara, you've earned the right to call a cell phone. You've engaged at such a level that you have a dialogue going. You've prepared all these documents, and you have earned the right in a frank and fear-free manner to just say, Kara, I just need to understand where we stand, and we have an opportunity to move forward. And if not, can you tell me, very clearly what's on your mind? Because I really want to earn your business. I feel that we're prepared. Our team is leaning in, waiting for your word, but I need to understand where you're coming from. And just ask them, hey, is it a timing issue? Is there a competing priority that we're not aware of? Let us know. And then depending on what you offered, if there was an incentive, you just may say, as a courtesy, I got to let you know that we're going to have to readdress our financials when you come back because, we make our proposals available, for X amount of day period. And as we go into the new year, we're going to have to evaluate this. But if you'd like, we could contract now and have you pay later, and freeze the pricing and implement later when you have the funds ready to go forward, if that's the case. I just want to work with you if you're willing to work with me.
Okay, well, I'll try that. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, but also want to share with you the three SWs. We call these Sierra whiskeys in my veteran group, and it's a bit bold, but I just want to share with you that, some will, some won't, so what? And you may have to get yourself just another qualified opportunity, and then evaluate when that person calls you back whether you're going to offer the same services at the same price, or they're going to have to pay a premium because you have an increase in the cost structure and they didn't take advantage of it when you were making it available. Some people aren't going to be good enough to be your customer,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
don't.
the cold hard truth.
Yeah, that is because they don't come back. They see it and then it's I have yet to have somebody once I've sent a proposal and they've ghosted me, they never come back. So I usually figure either one, they're not doing it, or two, they've gone with somebody else. That and if they were interested, when I was selling, and I've been in business development my whole career, when I was selling in the travel aid industry, the second year of my employment, I was the top national salesperson for cruises in the country. And I usually found when you've got your qualified prospect, if they're interested, they're buying within 2 weeks. You've answered questions. They have questions regarding your proposal. You're engaging in dialogue. They're moving forward. They're asking about deposits. So the interest actually increases in your communication instead of decreases. So the ones I lost were the ones that ghosted me. Once I gave them pricing, they disappeared. They never came back. So I'm thinking that they just were tire kickers or seeking information. I see the same thing kind of here, but I don't want to lose them. Once I've sent out a proposal, I think they should be 80% of the way there.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why, oh gosh, I make the mistake over and over and over again, Kara, because I get either happy ears and I think I heard everything I wanted to hear when maybe I didn't. Or B, I'm just excited because I want to produce results, right? Because that's how we make our living. And you figure if we just rinse and repeat. But there is that time where I would say if you're ghosted and it didn't go further, this is where I also talk about the value of having your CRM and keeping that in your CRM as, lost and saying, putting a category of lost ghosted, didn't hear back, and then go back and evaluate at some point in time at some other interval where you go back and there may be a lull or an appropriate time or another trigger that may create a valid business reason to re-engage and see if they go back into the top of the funnel again.
Yeah, I'll try that. And it's a good time now because it's the holiday season, so I'm sending out all my holiday wishes. And so it's a good time to reconnect with some of the past ones. Maybe it's just a timing issue. Uh,
Mm.
so it is good. It's just I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose them at 80%. You've already invested, you've already given away your information, then it's time to close. And so making them have a meeting with you first, I think is more important. Um, is the step I'm missing. So I'm going to try that with this because this isn't a commodity. This is compliance as a service. This isn't
No,
something
no
that,
doubt.
it's not a lollipop that you can just buy. This is something that deserves some respect, mutual respect from your clients. And if they're not willing to provide it, then I don't want to work with them either. And it's also a way to vet the good ones from the bad ones because um, good clients will follow through the sales process because they're interested and engaged and they want to work with you. And ones that could be trouble later, usually if you find in the buying process, if they're trouble in the buying process, they're trouble in the implementation process.
Uh, wow, I couldn't have articulated that any better. Yeah, I couldn't even fit that in on the slide. That was one of my thoughts that I had, but I couldn't get it on the slide. You're absolutely right. This is a qualifier for you as well. And Kara, I would say that you're on target. But I would also invite if you find yourself getting through this holiday period and you're starting off next year and you want to have more detailed, robust discussion, specific, I open up the dialogue with you anytime. I think you're on track and um, you've got it. I mean. But my thing is when someone ghosts, I wouldn't lose their information entirely. I would keep it in your database in your CRM and come up a way that you could re-engage with them and put them in the funnel at some other time and let them know, hey, we've already invested, and you could just know whether or not because sometimes it didn't work out with who they went because their method of making a process failed them, and that vendor didn't work, and they realized that you were still consistent and steady. And they now need to get together with a real organized professional who's going to see it through from start to finish and have an ongoing interest in them. They have a unique business, you have a unique business, you have a tailored solution to meet their needs, and you understand that. So you bring great value.
Yeah, I think it's getting that respect, the mutual respect, and when you have it, then it's a good engagement. And when you don't, then it's not somebody that you want to deal with either. Like I have some really good high end clients, but we're breaking into the CMMC space, and then the Canadian version is CPCSC. So we're breaking into it and just getting that trust and getting going on compliance as a service. And they need to respect us. If we're not just someone they can take our information and throw it out. Like that, that doesn't work. And if they don't respect, then I guess they're not the right people for us. But I do need to make sure that we're not being arrogant at the same time too. Like there's a balance there. I don't.
Yeah, I don't think there's any arrogance when you're very empathetically just say, hey, we take our time with every client. We don't treat them like a number. We put the proper time to do our due diligence and do the proper discovery. And if we value you and if you'll give us that opportunity, we'll work with you. And their actions and inactions will tell you whether or not you have a qualified client.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to try and call this client now and see if I can't get him to respond and see where we go with that. That's helpful. And I'm going to fix the sales process so that they don't get our paper until we've met with them to go over it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And keep in contact so I could celebrate your success, Kara.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate your time and attention. Thank you very much. And thanks to Jeremy too.
I will make sure he knows. Take care and have a great rest of the day and a wonderful holiday season when it gets here for you.
And thank you, you too.